Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflects the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your own leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community, for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. A fundamental shift is occurring beneath the surface of modern leadership. I wrote in my journal recently, "Is it the end of thinking?" And I left it there. And I thought about this for a while. The question really does keep me up because I'm seeing this everywhere. Leaders who mistake information consumption for wisdom. Leaders who confuse prompt engineering with problem solving. We live in this golden age of access. Every answer literally exists somewhere and it's instantly retrievable, especially on Gen AI applications. Every insight, though, has been reduced to a quote card, and every complex idea is flattened into digestible snippets. When wisdom arrives prepackaged, what happens to our capacity for critical thinking? So let me be clear about my reflections on Gen AI. It is the greatest equalizer because the world's knowledge sits at every person's fingertips. And when you understand some basic prompt framework like context, objective, strategy, tactics, and deliverables, anyone can craft what they are calling a mega prompt to, quote, act like a McKinsey consultant, or tell the Gen AI tool to, quote, think like a Stanford MBA. Knowledge is free, and it's abundant like never before. Every layperson can create complex outputs. Here's the paradigm shift. When knowledge becomes commoditized, what makes us distinctly human becomes premium. So things like reasoning, pattern recognition, analysis, curiosity, empathy, and compassion will soon be in high demand because everyone's output is going to be the same. The problem arises when we confuse what I'm calling cognitive amplification with cognitive replacement, which leads to cognitive atrophy. So let me explain. Cognitive amplification preserves your humanity while leveraging AI's power. So think about prompts like, help me refine the tone of this strategy memo, or point out blind spots in my quarterly analysis, or challenge my reasoning on this decision. All very good. Cognitive replacement, on the other hand, outsources humanity to the algorithm. So when you say things like, give me 3 strategic options for market expansion, or write my comprehensive business plan for Q1, or generate our team's performance review criteria, what happens is you're outsourcing all of your thinking. The first approach enhances what makes you as a leader irreplaceable. The second makes you replaceable. Because in a world where anyone can say that they are going to be a McKinsey consultant and they can access those types of frameworks through a prompt, your competitive advantage lies in the uniquely human capacities that no algorithm can replicate. The ability to synthesize complexity and recognize patterns that others miss and apply wisdom born from experience and empathy, that's you. Think about it. These are the exact capabilities that elevated you to your leadership role in the very first place. So before AI democratized access to frameworks and knowledge, you distinguish yourself already through your ability to see what others couldn't see, to connect dots that others missed, and navigate complexity with nuanced judgment. Your reasoning, pattern recognition, and emotional intelligence already set you apart. But now that everyone has access to the same knowledge base, these differentiating human capacities become even more valuable. The question becomes, are you strengthening these muscles, or are you letting them atrophy through cognitive replacement? So I want to talk to you a little bit about the neuroscience of cognitive atrophy. Some of you might have read that MIT's latest research reveals the stakes. Now, it is a little bit of a controversial study given the size of the study and how long the study took place for, but here's what happened. Students who relied on ChatGPT for essays showed reduced brain activity. They retained less information, and they became increasingly complacent. Now, over just 4 sessions, they shifted from seeking minimal help to copying and pasting entire sections of text. The statistics are actually pretty sobering. More than 80% of AI users were unable to recall key content from their own essays afterward. Their brains showed weaker alpha and theta brainwaves. Now, you may be asking yourself, what exactly is alpha and theta brainwaves? Fair enough, I'm going to tell you. Those are the very frequencies that are associated with creativity, memory, and semantic processing. Most critically, they exhibited reduced connectivity in brain regions responsible for memory, attention, and executive control. Meanwhile, the brain-only group showed robust neural connectivity across executive functioning areas in working memory systems and creating generation networks. Even when ChatGPT users stopped using AI and returned to unassisted writing, here's what's remarkable. They continued to show a lingering suppression of activity. The researchers referred to this as cognitive debt. So what's so fascinating about this is that the task was done, it was done efficiently, it was done correctly and conveniently, but you basically didn't integrate any of that at all into your brain. This was measurable brain atrophy, affecting the very regions that distinguish leaders from operators. So let's talk about the Kahneman framework. The late Daniel Kahneman, his groundbreaking work on System 1 and System 2 thinking provides the perfect framework for understanding our current leadership crisis. So let's explain this. System 1 is fast, automatic, and intuitive. System 2 engages in deliberate analytical thinking. Now, as Kahneman explained, System 1 provides suggestions. When endorsed by System 2, they become the beliefs we have, the decisions we make, and the actions that we take. Modern AI tools amplify System 1 exponentially. We scroll, we react, decide, and then we move on. Every prompt becomes an automatic response. But leadership really lives in System 2, in the pause before the answer, in the reflection that challenges instinct, in the willingness to slow down when stakes rise. Great leaders understand that when context demands it, it requires deeper thinking. They know the difference between System 1 AI tasks, like clean up the grammar in this memo, and System 2 AI replacement, such as develop our strategic plan for market expansion. Kahneman showed us, even before Gen AI was available to Kahneman, that it takes discipline to slow down as the stakes and complexity rise. In our AI-accelerated world, this discipline becomes the defining leadership skill. So what are we really losing? Well, the real crisis goes beyond technological dependence. We erode what makes great leaders irreplaceable. The ability to sit with complexity, to synthesize disparate information, to see patterns that others miss. This cognitive complexity separates leaders from operators. Now, research shows that cognitively complex leaders not only absorb more information, but they also make better sense of it. They don't get overwhelmed by ambiguity, they get curious. Now, leaders in cognitive complexity exhibit 2 critical capacities. The first one is what's called cognitive differentiation. The other one is called cognitive integration. So in cognitive differentiation, the ability to break down situations into multiple parts, consider different perspectives, identify trade-offs, and detect nuance. Now, integration means the capacity to connect those differentiated parts into a coherent whole, enabling strategic decisions that account for a wide range of factors. These leaders are more innovative, they're more resilient under pressure, and more effective at navigating strategic uncertainty. They see the world with greater nuance. They process information more richly and make more effective decisions in complex environments. So, let's talk about some other research that is very fascinating regarding this whole topic. There was some research coming out of the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and they revealed that handwriting actually activates far more elaborate brain connectivity patterns than typing. What does this mean? Okay, so when we write by hand, like I do with my journal every single morning, there are widespread neural networks that are activated and working. Those neural networks are crucial for memory formation and encoding new information that springs to life. Handwriting actually engages the hippocampus in your brain. The hippocampus, if you don't know, strengthens memory and conceptual understanding. So I'm not suggesting that we all go out and start writing all of our emails by hand and then scanning it and sending it. What I am suggesting is that thinking through complex problems, slowing down enough to write manually what is on your mind, how you could work out those problems, is really critical. Reading comprehension studies consistently show that people who read on screens, get this, they actually score lower than those who read the same material on paper. Researchers refer to this as the screen inferiority effect, a very fancy phrase for it. So in other words, physical books actually offer spatial cues that aid memory and information recall. So when we replace deep reading with snippet scanning, the neural circuits for connecting ideas across disciplines actually weaken. We become fluent in recognition of words, but we become shallow in comprehension. Again, not suggesting that we go ahead and we print out every single one of our emails and read it on a piece of paper. However, it's being able to slow down and read something, and if you're as old as I am, highlight pages with a highlighter, make some notes in the marginalia, and have that as something that you are actually writing and reading on paper, because you are activating neural networks that are far different than when you read on a screen. Reclaiming this is hugely important. So what I would like to do is provide you with a blueprint to help you. So the first thing is practice deep work. Now, Cal Newport talks about this in his book, Deep Work, and it's really important. I do this in my calendar, and it's just absolutely critical. And I encourage all of you to find an opportunity to, and we talked about this in another Gold Standard Leadership podcast, which is to basically own your calendar. Block uninterrupted time for reflection and focus. You have to do this. Leaders must protect time for deep thinking to make better decisions. If you have complex projects that you need to work on, which you should, if you have big strategies that you need to be focused in on, which you should, then you need to be able to take the pause. Block out an hour or 2 hours just for yourself to be able to work through those problems. Your team relies upon you to be able to think strategically, but you can't do that if you don't own your calendar. And you can't do that if everyone else is dictating what you should be doing with your time. Your company pays you to be a strategic, critical thinker. The next one I want to talk to you about is reading long and reading hard. Look, complex texts, as we talked about before, activate neural circuits, but these neural circuits are activated with empathy and analysis. So if you choose difficulty over convenience, like philosophy over headlines or philosophy over social media snippets, then the cognitive struggle becomes growth. You're challenging your brain. So if you carve out this time for deep work, for deep focus, to read, to write, right? That is actually going to be able to help you become a better leader. So that actually leads me to my third one, which is to write by hand. Again, handwriting engages your brain to strengthen memory and conceptual understanding. Your notebook becomes a thinking tool that builds the neural infrastructure for insight. Again, I am not talking about reverting technology. I am all about embracing Gen AI in very strategic and meaningful ways. And I love technology in every way possible. But we have to be able to find this synergistic balance between the technology and also being able to ensure that we are activating all of the neural networks that make us who we are as a human. So here's the leadership imperative. AI can literally generate answers in milliseconds. Wisdom takes time. It requires integration, memory, and the willingness to sit with uncertainty. It demands testing ideas against experience and seeing beyond the obvious. The leaders who will thrive will process information more deeply. While others chase the next prompt, you'll be the one who sees the pattern that no algorithm can detect. And while others copy and paste their way through complexity, you'll be the one who synthesizes insight from seemingly unrelated inputs. We can all become professional prompt engineers, or we can reclaim what makes leadership irreplaceable. Vulnerability, authenticity, the courage to think slowly in a fast world. And remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Take this lesson and use it in your leadership journey. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.